So what you want is you want to have your Mod Podge, which I have in a container here. For this step, you can use any type of patterned script paper or ledger paper. You can also use paper from a book or just plain ledger paper that you would buy for school. And you're just going to rip it up in different pieces, different sizes of pieces, and lay it down. Make sure that the part between the canvas and the paper is got a good layer of Mod Podge on it. So the last thing we need to do on this step of the background is we just need to prepare it to be a painting surface. So what you want to do is get some clear gesso. It doesn't have to be Liquitex, it can be any gesso, but it has to be clear. Going to put a little bit on, and you're just going to spread it around to brush it around, and there's not really any technique for this. Just make sure it's all completely covered. So just a quick note for those of you who are wondering, this canvas takes about half an hour to an hour to dry once you put the clear gesso on it. Depending on how humid the place is, it may take longer or it may take quicker. But you can also use a heat gun or a blow dryer. Okay, so I'll just show you a little bit of my setup here. I've got my palette here. This is just a small one. So that's all we really need because we're not using too many different colors. It is, it's kind of running. This has actually been sitting for a little bit, but that's okay. It's still, it's not dry. This has been here for about a week now, and so we'll use it as long as we can. One thing I do want to mention is this is a highly textured piece, but you will get more texture if you use thicker paint, so heavy body paint. I'm not adding anything, I'm just using the regular paint that I showed you. I'm not adding anything to it. It's not considered a heavy body paint, so it still gives a decent amount of texture. But I would suggest, before you get into that, to just try it so that you kind of know what you're doing, because the heavier body is definitely more money. I would try this out and you'll be perfectly happy with the results. Okay, back to my palette. So I have my palette here. I have a water can here. I have two different sides here. So this is my clean water here. And I have some paint off to the side in case I need to refill. And then, because we're going to be using a little bit of mixed media techniques, I have my stamps that we talked about in the materials. I have them right here as well. And I have my palette knives, and anything else I might want to need over here, like some white paint and whatever. Remember, when you are whitewashing the canvas, that you don't want a really thick application of paint. We want just a thin layer, and you want the pattern to show through from the paper underneath. And I just kind of dab it in some places, and you know, you can see me swiping it a little bit there, and that's fine. And some areas you can leave completely blank if you want. You don't have to cover absolutely everything. So just make sure that you don't cover it completely. We're not going for an opaque look here. Here I'm using the Cerulean Blue, and I'm kind of just thinking about a sky. I'm not trying to make it look like a realistic sky with clouds. I'm just giving the impression of some blue in there, because this is an abstract piece. So don't try to paint a realistic sky for this. You're just You're just giving a sky feeling, a sky mood. I also just want to mention here that I am doing this at the easel because that's how I find it easiest to work with a palette knife. But you can do it at a table just fine. I've taught many classes of this exact piece and many pieces like it where people just do it at the table without an easel and they find it just fine. If you want, you can set up a little bit of an angle with a book or some kind of thing just underneath the top of your canvas to have a little bit of an angle, but many people find doing it flat on the table, and I just did it at an easel so that you could kind of see my palette and my canvas at the same time. Now, if you are just starting out in mixed media and wondering what tools to get, this may give you some ideas of different things you can do with different tools, but don't feel like you must go out and spend a bunch of money. You really don't have to. I'm using a stamp here, but honestly, you could do the same with a brush, and you will see me filling it in with just a little brush here in a little bit. I've had classes where they just do it with the brush. You can use stencils. You can use any kind of tool will give effects. Just look around your house. And obviously for those, here you go. Here you see me with the brush there. Those of you who are doing mixed media, who have done mixed media lots, probably already have many ideas of what you could do and what you could use in your house, and you probably don't need a whole lot of instruction from me as to what materials to use here, but this just gives you an idea of different things you can use. Remember when you are using a stamp that the runnier the ink or the paint is, the more of a watercolor kind of effect you will get in that pattern. And if you want a very crisp, clean line, you don't want really runny paint. You want a nice, good application of paint. Make sure it's not runny. So I wanted a kind of runnier, inky watercolor effect. And then, you know, I can always clean up the little drips that I don't like, but I do like some of the drips and the more subtle patterns. I didn't necessarily want everything to be really crisp lines, just the pattern to kind of go in and out of on the paper. And you also, what I'm rubbing on the stamp there is a mixture of ink and paint, and so I mix a whole bunch of things just to get a different color. So feel free to do that if you think it might give you the right color that you want. To start with impasto painting, this class, remember, is for beginners. So for someone who has maybe never even done any art before. I have taught this class many times, and the majority of people that have taken it, I mean, I've taught it in person, were quite scared. And at first, when you start working with the knife, it just feels very maybe awkward, a little bit scary. But as you begin, you start getting a feeling for it. So you could do a couple of tests. But these flowers, they're really, I'm not teaching any specific technique for a specific flower here. It's really just getting a handle on how to put paint from the palette knife onto the canvas. And, you know, anyone can see that I'm not really doing a lot and in the way of a certain technique. Because this class is for anyone who wants to just pick up a palette knife and begin to start working. One thing I will say is to load the one side of your knife. Don't dip it flat into the paint. Look at how I'm picking it up there. I'm loading it on one side of the knife. And that is really the best way. And then you get texture when that paint kind of squishes out the side. And really just do a few and you'll kind of get the feeling for it. And it doesn't take long before you know, it's not as scary and it's not as awkward. And as I said, I've taught this many times to people. And the first couple of swipes is a little bit scary for someone who's never done it. But then it gets very fun, and it's quite enjoyable. So I would encourage you to definitely try it. Don't be scared about it, and don't get scared because I'm not teaching any. You know, you're not making a perfectly formed flower, and we're not even doing any specific flower. So yeah, definitely go ahead and try it. Another tip that I want to give for working with a palette knife, or for that matter, an iTunes card, which we will be doing soon, is keep, especially for stems, keep going with the paint that's on your knife. So don't just do one and then get more, because you will get thicker and thinner stems depending on how you hold your knife, but also how much paint you have on your knife. So get it all off and use that to get varying stems. And remember the angle that you hold your palette knife. If you do it to a complete right angle, you'll get a thinner line. Whereas if you angle it a little bit, like more of a 45-degree, then you might get a little bit of a wider line. So just definitely experiment with it and see how it goes. And don't be scared to just go right through the flowers. Remember, this is an abstract piece here, so you know you want to go through. And this is kind of like a wildflower effect. So there's going to be stems everywhere, flowers everywhere, and please don't try to do it perfectly, because it honestly shouldn't be perfect. It won't. It looks better when it's not perfect. You want to kind of mess it up. You don't want to put a big blob of paint everywhere, but you want to be a little bit careless with it. Just make sure that one thing you're not doing is adding a whole bunch of green in one spot so that you can't even tell that it's supposed to be stems. And then go in with a little bit of darker green to define it a little bit. That will definitely help. And you know, add some more yellow in there. You could even go in with some yellow stems if you wanted. But see, I'm going right through some of that. And it just helps to give it more movement and more feel and more character. So here now, I am just laying my palette knife flat in the paint because I just want to put just like a good little dab of paint on top of the flowers to give them a little more texture. I'm not trying to form anything. And so I'm just like, and I'm not squishing my knife against the canvas in a certain way. I just want to tap it on there. So I just want to lay some paint down. So in this case, you know, I'm kind of just putting it flat in the paint and then picking up a little bit there. And I might as well mention that this video, the filming part I did for a class I teach on Skillshare, and I'm just doing a little bit of editing now, changing it a little bit, not changing the filming part, not changing the canvas at all, but just doing a little bit of editing with narration so that it can be for YouTube, so I can add it to my YouTube channel. And so I'm taking music out that I had on for it on Skillshare, and because I don't want to have that on my YouTube channel. So you might see a few little titles come up, and that was for a previous editing of this video. So just pay no attention to that. This is something completely, I'm re-narrating it now. And here I'm adding some white. So remember that I think it was the Frugal Crafter who I was watching something of hers, and she said, I think she said something like, you know, every painting has a hot mess stage, and so definitely this does as well. But as soon as you start adding in a little bit of highlights and shading into those flowers, they really start to make sense, if you know what I mean. So just keep working with it. If you think, oh, I don't know, just keep going with it and trying it out. And I mean, what's the worst that could happen? You know, do another one that turns out better. And you can see that I'm adding it over the words because I kind of want the words to be hidden anyways. And so yeah, like even just right there, you can see that those flowers have a lot more form to them now with just the white added in there. And I think I go in there with another darker yellow just in the center. So just try it, and honestly, you'll get a feeling for it. You might, you know, it is a little bit scary, but definitely go in, and here I'm just putting yellow and white right on my palette knife and putting it on the canvas. So there's different ways. Find out what works the best for you. Another tip that is quite important is to stop and just take a step back and look at your canvas, because especially in this kind of piece, you can start adding flowers and you're not really paying attention to the composition of the piece, and pretty soon you have all yellow flowers in some place, and it doesn't work. So definitely every once in a while take a step back and say, oh, where could I stick a flower here? Where could I put something here? And that is honestly a general rule with almost any type of painting. And so make sure that you don't get too involved in one area of the canvas and get too focused on that. Because all of a sudden you step back and you realize, what have I done? So just try to remember to do that. It definitely helps. Okay, so at this point, we want to just take a look and see what we need to change, what we don't like. So here's a few things that I can see. I want to take this, I want to put it in the back a little bit. It's too obvious, and some of this blue is just a little bit too dark, so I want to add some lighter blue on top of it. And there's too much green here, so I want to add some flowers or just some white grass maybe. And then there's this here that was caused by some texture in the paper. So I think this is canvas here, and then this is paper, and this is paper, so it just kind of, so I just want to take even a brush or just take a knife and make sure I go across there, because I don't want that. So I decided to just dab some white, I think there might be a little bit of blue in there, just on top of those letters, just to kind of push them back a little bit. I don't know why, for some reason they just seemed a little too obvious for me, and I just wanted them to be really subtle. So that's kind of how I'm fixing that mistake, and then I'm going around just wherever and just kind of sponging over some of those areas that I just want to fade out a little bit. And then I'm going in with some other green and just adding in some of those, some more of those stems, and just fixing some of those areas where it looks like a stem has stopped and started. And that's just from the paper. That's part of the mixed media background. So it looks really cool, but there's just sometimes those little effects, you just want to fix it. And honestly, I just put one swipe of the knife through and it worked. It fixed the problem. So that's how I did that. And I'm just kind of now just honestly just kind of fiddling probably and just looking at the composition and just seeing where maybe some spots could have a little bit more. Another thing that you could do is splatter on the canvas with a toothbrush or maybe with a brush, and just use some watered down paint. I would just do a test area first just to make sure that you've got the right consistency, because if it's too watery, it will just look like puddles. And if it's dry, then if it's too dry, the paint that you use to splatter, it won't splatter. So then obviously you've got to add a little bit more moisture to it. And going in with my trusty iTunes card, which I don't know, I've been using an iTunes card on my paintings for years now. I think it's become kind of a normal thing now for artists. And now I'm also just babbling as I'm narrating because it's getting towards the end. So I just want to say that I really do hope you try it, and let me know in the comments below how you find it. And if you're on Facebook or Instagram, you can always check out my Facebook page and let me know. On Instagram, you can tag me in it. I'm just Janelle Nickel. And let me know how you find it if you do this canvas. I would love to see the results that you have, because I'm starting a new thing where I'm doing mixed media Mondays, and so far this is my plan: mixed media Mondays, watercolor Wednesdays, and then flower Fridays on my YouTube channel. So this is my first mixed media, so I thought, well, I'll offer one of my paid courses on my YouTube channel for free. So this is normally a paid course, and honestly, everything is in here. I haven't really edited anything out for that I have on Skillshare. I think maybe there's a couple things that I speeded up a little bit, but I'm not even sure if I did too much of that. I just re-narrated it because I had to take, frankly, because I had to take some of the music out, just because it was copyrighted, and I could put it on my YouTube channel, but then I'm not able to monetize it and other people make money from it. So if someone's making money on this YouTube video, might as well be me, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, it's really time for me to end the narration, and I'll just let you watch the rest in peace. But yes, thank you very much for watching, and please give me a thumbs up and click on subscribe if you haven't yet.